like a Monsignor. The Basilica of St. Peter's in Rome, where I was ordained, has a privilege given to, I think it was Pope Urban VIII who did it, that whoever is ordained in the Basilica of St. Peter's may dress as a Monsignor, but he doesn't have the title. So I dress like a Monsignor, but I'm not a Monsignor. I'm Father Hesse. And, or Father Gregory. If you want to call me Father Gregory, go ahead. It's fine with me. And, but the privilege is given to a place, and not at the discretion of the one who holds them. That's according to Canon Law. The privilege has been given to the place. So I use the privilege, except in Advent and Lent, if somebody gets me a cassock that's all black. And this explains my dress. I'm sure that the same people who complained about my wearing black BDUs on the other tape are going to complain about my violet sash now. This here. Let them. If they have nothing else to worry about, they must be very happy people. I've shown you, and I'm sure it was tedious and boring for some, but it had to be. I've shown you how the council operates, how the council fathers, the experts, and the theologians dealt with something as sacred as tradition. I've shown you that they are, objectively speaking, totally dishonest in this council and contradictory to themselves. Now, going on in analyzing the documents of the very same council, rest assured, I will not bore you with a full reading anymore, because actually the document on liturgy is somewhat interesting to all of us because we suffer from the results of it. But the other documents in the council are so deadly boring that I might fall asleep right through the lecture of it. I will never know. I'm a man who likes to read Tom Clancy and Clive Cussler and the real page-turners, you know what I mean. I will never find out what, maybe the Holy Spirit, but I don't believe in personal inspirations. Maybe it was just the grace of God that enabled me to study this incredibly boring book 5 times over. I hope I've never have to do it again, but I'm afraid I might have to. The council is incredibly boring, incredibly loquacious, and packed with blah blah and what we call verbal diarrhea. Excuse me, but that's what it is. It doesn't say much, and the few things it says were disastrous, as you will see. However, I forgot to give you another beautiful quotation. I'm a collector, and you could help me with that. If you ever see those Protestant neon-lighted billboard signs outside the church with some wise cracks there, write to me. Collect them. Here's one. I was going to waste. Jesus recycled me. The other one. Kmart is not the only saving place. Sorry about that digression from scientific precision. As an appendix to what I said about Vatican II and liturgy, I have to clear up a mistake. A missal in 1570 is not binding to successors. As a matter of fact, one of the most prominent traditionalists in this country said that. Their argument very often is the following. Furthermore, by these presents and by virtue of our apostolic authority, we give and grant in perpetuity that for the singing or reading of Mass in any church whatsoever, this missal may be followed absolutely, without any scruple of conscience or fear of incurring any penalty, judgment, or censure, and may be freely and lawfully used. Nor shall bishops, administrators, canons, chaplains, and other secular priests or religious of whatsoever order, or by whatsoever title be designated, be obliged to celebrate Mass otherwise than enjoined by us. We likewise order and declare that no one whosoever shall be forced to coerced into altering this missal. And this present constitution can never be revoked or modified, but shall forever remain valid and have the force of law. notwithstanding previous constitutions or edicts of provincial or synodal councils, and notwithstanding the usage of the churches aforesaid, established by very long and even immemorial prescriptions, saving only usage of more than 200 years. They say the same legal formula can never be revoked or modified, but shall forever remain valid and have the force of law, was used by Benedict XIV when he dissolved the Jesuit order. Therefore, if I was right in saying that quo primo must never be changed, Pope Pius VII was wrong when he reinstituted the Jesuit order and went against the decree of his predecessor. These people do not understand that we deal with a disciplinary matter, not a matter of faith. If a pope dissolves the Jesuit order, another one might as well say, well, we have the Jesuit order back again. I don't know if this was good or bad. Judging to what happens today, it might have been a very bad decision, but that's not the point. The point is, we are talking about disciplinary matters. I told you that the Pope cannot bind his successors in disciplinary matters and matters of positive law. The way how Mass is said, however, is not a mere question of discipline and positive law. If the oldest liturgical law of all is lex orandi, lex credendi, the law of what has to be prayed determines the law of what has to be believed, then Holy Mass is not only a question of faith, but the basis of faith. If you change Holy Mass around, and if Holy Mass is not what it was, then you have a different basis of the faith. That means you have different laws of praying, you have different laws of believing. So, when a pope uses a formula like this on the question if I may wear violet buttons or not, his successor might as well say, I don't care. But if a pope uses this formula on something as important as the Roman liturgy, his successor may not say that. Therefore, I read again, abbreviated, by these presents and by virtue of our apostolic authority, we order and declare that no one whosoever shall be forced or coerced into altering dismissal, and this present constitution can never be revoked or modified, but shall forever remain valid and have the force of law. This constitution deals about the basis of the faith. It deals about matters of the faith. It cannot be revoked. When Pope Pius X decided that the Sunday during the year, is to be elevated to the rank, practically to the rank of duplex prima classis, that meant the rank of a very important feast, he did not revoke or modify this constitution. He did not say this cannot remain valid and have the force of law. On the contrary, he explained that he was restoring the importance of Sunday, because at the time of St. Pius V, there were a lot less saints in the calendar than you'll find now. So at the times of St. Pius V, there were many Sunday Masses in green chasuble. By the time St. Pius X was Pope, there were very few Sunday Masses in green chasuble, because most Sundays during the summer have some saint to be celebrated, some saint more important than the Sunday used to be. And this is not good. This is not the intention of Pius V, and it's not the old Mass. So he elevated the rank of Sunday in order to have the green chasuble, part of the sign that every sacrament is, in order to have the green chasuble and the Sunday celebrated again, and not just commemorated. The very fact, we talk about interpretation. Is it the Herr Dr. Hesse who interprets this apostolic constitution, or the popes? Yes, it is the popes, not the Herr Dr. Hesse. It is not Father Gregory who interprets this constitution. The popes did. And if those traditionalists who say that this is not binding would bother to read all the decrees that you find in the Roman Missal of St. Pius V, issued by his successors, including John the 23rd, you will see that the popes interpreted quo primum as something unchangeable. Because up till 1962, with the Missal of John the 23rd, He always found at the beginning of the missal, quo primum, and all the decrees of the other popes who changed little things, rubrics mostly, and the popes who dared to change things in the missal, even if it was only minor rubrics, explained why they did it. Now, if quo primum was not binding to a successor, why would the successor want to explain himself that well? If he has the right anyway to change things, he doesn't have to explain that. If the Pope says from now on, every priest who is ordained in Rome will automatically have the title of Monsignor, he does not have to explain that. If the Pope says, I want you to say the Rosary not only every day, but on Sunday 3 times. It might be a bit demanding, but he doesn't have to explain why he wants it. He's the Pope. Why did all the popes after Pius V, until Paul VI of most infelicitous memory, why did all these popes explain every single change they made? Because they knew that quo primum was binding, so they had to explain, we did not go against quo primum with what we did. And they explained why what they did was not against the will of St. Pius V, binding them forever. This had to be cleared up. It is ridiculous to argue against the binding authority of this document, because it's probably one of the most important ever issued, and it binds the popes. It binds the popes because of the Canon 13, the 7th session of Council of Trent, because of In Junctum Nobis by Paul IV that said we hold steadfast to all traditions, because of the tradition in the Church, because of the oath of incoronation, and because of all the teachings of all the popes until 1958. The teaching of the popes, what does that mean? What is the authority of a pope teaching? A pope can teach in an extraordinary magisterial manner or in an ordinary magisterial manner. A pope may define a dogma or condemn a heresy, binding every single Christian, not only in his conscience and obedience, but by his divine faith. Even in the new Code of Canon Law, this rule has been maintained, believe it or not. Now, what's the difference between extraordinary and ordinary magisterium? The ordinary magisterium is when the Pope, in a non-solemn way, decides on moral issues or teaches theology. He teaches something about the faith. Pius XII, in the 1940s and 50s, was faced with modernist priests and bishops who said, we only have to believe the Pope when he pronounces a dogma. They said we don't have to believe and obey the Pope in the other things. Now, usually mankind has a tendency, just like a pendulum, one extreme to the other. Either it's far right or far left. Either it is beyond what is right or it is not reaching what is right. There are many people in this country who are really downright what should be called papalists. If the Pope tomorrow dyes his hair green, I will do it too. Oh, the Pope can do everything. He is always infallible. He's not infallible unless he claims to be infallible and uses the necessary formula. The Pope has, in order to be infallible, he has to say, by virtue of my apostolic authority, I herewith declare, statute, and define that so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. This is to be held forever by every Catholic, by every single Catholic, under the pain of excommunication. This is to be held forever. Every Catholic must believe it. Pope John Paul II used this formula once in his 19-year career as Pope. When he decided that women cannot be ordained to the priesthood, he said, I decide this forever by virtue of my apostolic authority, and this has to be believed by everybody forever. It seems that this was an infallible pronouncement. When the Pope says, I think this and this and this and this happened, then he's just He's just speaking as a private person. Pius XII said in his encyclical Humani Generis concerning some false opinions which threaten to undermine the foundations of Catholic doctrine, in number 20 he says, "Nor must it be thought that what is expounded in encyclical letters does not of itself demand consent, since in writing such letters the popes do not exercise the supreme power of their teaching authority." But give you the sign where to repeat, where to continue with the text. "And generally what is expounded and inculcated in encyclical letters already for other reasons appertains to Catholic doctrine. But if the Supreme Pontiffs in their official documents purposely pass judgment on a matter up to that time under dispute, it is obvious that the matter, according to the mind and will of the same Pontiff, cannot be any longer considered a question open to discussing among theologians." I want to see who dares now, after having heard this, still to say that the Pope cannot bind his successor. In the ordinary magisterium, that means with an encyclical. The Pope says here, in writing such letters, the popes do not exercise the supreme power of their teaching authority. But generally what is expounded and inculcated in encyclical letters already for other reasons appertains to Catholic doctrine. But if the Supreme Pontiffs in their official documents purposely pass judgment on a matter up to that time under dispute, it is obvious that the matter, according to the mind and will of the same Pontiffs, cannot be any longer considered a question open to discussion among theologians. When Pope Paul VI wrote Humane Vitae, he did not pronounce a dogma. But no future pope may ever dare to say that artificial contraception is all right. When Pope Pius IX condemned all kinds of heresies in his syllabus of errors, he did not proclaim a dogma. But woe unto the Pope who says the contrary. The Pope today says the contrary. So this is the teaching authority. The Pope can bind his successor in many things. Why? There's an old Latin saying, par in parem potestatem non habet. An equal does not have power in an equal. Yes, right. That's why, in all things that are left up to the individual Pope to decide, he cannot bind his successor. But when the Pope says, this here, from now on, has to be considered part of tradition, he doesn't have to say that verbally, literally. He just has to say, we condemn this error, we don't want this to be discussed any longer, and I herewith say that's what it is, or that is what has to be done by all Christians, by all faithful. Then he's making this part of tradition. Now the tradition, tradition does not grow, tradition does not know change. We'll talk about this in the next session. Tradition is something that has been concluded with the death of the last apostle. So the Pope does not add anything to tradition. He just says, this is part of tradition, this always has been part of tradition, and now that he has said that, no successor may say anything to the contrary. Never, ever. When the Pope in 1950 made the Assumption of Our Lady a dogma, again he did not say anything new. The apostles were witnesses to the empty grave. The Church has always believed that Our Lady is in heaven with body and soul. And even before Pius XII proclaimed it a solemn dogma, Pius IX would not have had the right to say, no, this is not true. He would have put himself outside the Church. The popes are absolutely bound to tradition. And this is the reason why Vatican II is unacceptable. We will now, and that's the last thing for today, analyze some of the most important points of the dogmatic constitution on the Church. Vatican II, Lumen Gentium, again, the first two words of the document, November 21st, 1964. It is not an irony, but providence of God, that November 21st, 1964, Vatican II pronounced the worst of all heresies, and November 21st, 1974, on the 10th day of this horrible document, Archbishop Lefebvre pronounced the principles of the Society of St. Pius X, saying that we hold steadfast to tradition, that we are faithful to the eternal Rome, not the modernist Rome of today. What is this modernist Rome of today teaching? It talks about the mystery of the Church. Since the Church in Christ is in the nature of sacrament, a sign and instrument, that is, of communion with God and of unity among all men, she here proposes, etc., blah, blah. This is number one of Lumen Gentium. Is the Church in the nature of sacrament? No. There are 7 sacraments in the Catholic Church. There is no Christ sacrament, Church sacrament, 7 sacraments. We have 7, not 9 sacraments. I know, I will be called a rigorist again, but the dogma has to be taken at face value. And Trent defined there are 7 sacraments, and whosoever says there's another thing but the 7 sacraments, let him be accursed, anathema sit. The Church is not in the nature of a sacrament, but it is a perfect society. We'll see that later. The Church is not a sign. The Church is an instrument, absolutely, yes. But the Church is not a sign. The Church is not symbolic. It's a reality. It's a perfect society on earth. It's the instrument with which Christ saves. You cannot call it a super sacrament for that. It is the perfect society, the instrument which contains and administers, as the only legitimate one, 7 sacraments. It is definitely an instrument of communion with God, but it is not an instrument of unity among all men. The Church is as much an instrument of unity among all men as I am Pope. I am Pope potentially. The Church is potentially an instrument of unity among all men. Actually, it is not. Christ said that he will cause wars, divisions, fights, family members fighting family members. He said, who is not willing to hate his own brother, mother, father, son, and for my sake is not worthy of me. He didn't mean the word hate in the sense we understand it today. The Latin word odire might as well mean avoid. Sometimes family members have to avoid other family members because they have the faith and the other ones don't. Christ did not come to unify all of mankind necessarily. He only wanted them unified in the faith, not outside. So the Church may be an instrument of unity among all men, but it definitely won't be. Non veni pacem mittere sed gladium. I did not come to bring the peace, but a sword. Then we are faced with a new concept of the Church here in number 5. This is not heresy. It is just truckloads of you know what. While she, the Church, slowly grows to maturity, the Church longs for the completed kingdom and with all her strength hopes and desires to be united in glory with her King. How does the Church grow to maturity if she's a perfect society? The Church cannot grow to maturity. The Church is infallible. The Church is indestructible. The Church is perfect. The Church cannot grow to maturity. Pope Pius XII, in the same Humani Generis, said it is a daring and wrong concept to say that the Church can grow in experience and maturity. He condemned that. He said the Church is perfect. The Church is indestructible. Christ said, et parte inferi non prevalebunt adversus eam, Matthew 16:18, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against her. With this statement, I have to add a parenthesis right here. If the Church is infallible, if the Church is perfect, and if the Church is indefectible, then why do I say that the priests, the bishops, and the Pope today are off their track, are in material heresy, material schism, and in a way do not belong to the church because they don't. The church is indefectible, not their members. I am not indefectible, I am not infallible, and I am not perfect. I realize that every time I go to confession, how perfect, indefectible, and infallible I am. The members of the church are not indefectible. The hierarchy is not indefectible as far as the hierarchy is consistent of members. The church herself is a perfect society. The church herself is indefectible. Then if the church is at the same time visible, where's the church to be found? I understand. It's confusing. It's complicated. Is Cardinal Archbishop Mahoney, is he the Cardinal Archbishop of Los Angeles? Yes, he is. He's appointed Cardinal Archbishop of Los Angeles, but is he Catholic? No, he's not. Materially, he's schismatic and a heretic. These people do not belong to the church. Pope Innocent III said, it is quite conceivable that the future Pope may teach heresy and put himself outside the church. Pope Innocent III did not say he ceases to be Pope. He said, it's quite possible that the future Pope may teach heresy and put himself outside the church, in which case we must not follow him. And he said the very fact that the Pope cannot be judged by any authority on earth should remind the Pope of the fact that the less somebody is judged by human beings, the more he will be judged by God. The church is a perfect society as such, not in a majority. This is a horrible democratic concept of the church. A father in this country, a priest in this country, whom out of charity I do not want to name, said that Father Hesse obviously knows it, and the priests and all the bishops don't. Okay, if that's a point of reasoning, then we might as well draw up a new charter of the church as a democracy. I mean, not even this country is a democracy. It's a constitutional republic if you take the Constitution serious, which the president doesn't, nor her husband. But this country is a constitutional republic. It's not a democracy. But the church is a monarchy, an absolute monarchy. The monarch is elected by designated electors. This is to say the cardinals. The church is a monarchy. The Pope governs the church, and if he doesn't, then I can't follow him. And if he pronounces heresy, then I will not agree with it. And if he gives wrong commands, then I will not follow them. I can. St. Thomas Aquinas made that abundantly clear, and so did Innocent III, to name popes. Innocent III and Pius IX. And indirectly, Eugene IV. I cannot follow him, and I will not. But the church herself is indefectible. And she's not governed by a majority, but by tradition. Is it impossible that out of 3,500 bishops, 3,496 would go against tradition, 94 would go against tradition? Is it possible? Yes, it is. Yes, of course. They have not been promised the Holy Spirit. The majority does not decide what is right or wrong. If the majority decides what is right or wrong, I can tell you what is right or wrong. In that case, I'd have at least 3 girlfriends. Oh, the majority would agree with that. Not the majority of Catholics, but the majority of Americans would. And the majority of bishops nowadays. Maybe. I don't want to be sued for libel. Maybe. Here's an example of infelicitous wording. Really sharing in the body of the Lord, in the breaking of the Eucharistic bread, we are taken up into communion with Him and with one another. Why can't they say in the sacrifice of Holy Mass? This is not heresy, but why can't they say in this, number 7. Why can't they say in the Holy Sacrifice of Mass? Why do they have to say in the breaking of the bread? Underlining the meal again. Martin Luther, the Herr Dr. Martin Luther would have loved that. Now we come to something that is not just an infelicitous wording, but downright heresy. Number 8. Lumen Gentium number 8. In the second paragraph, I read, "This is the sole Church of Christ, which in the Creed we profess to be one, holy, Catholic, and Apostolic." They say that, yes, but how? "Which our Savior, after his resurrection, entrusted to Peter's pastoral care, commissioning him and the other apostles to extend and rule it." Him and the other apostles. Here we got the concept of collegiality. Christ did not say, "You are Peter, and upon all of you I will build my church." No, no. This is why in English it is still translated with the disappeared in the usage of English, second person singular. "Thou art Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." On thee, Peter. Not on you, Peter and the apostles. On thee. Thou art Peter. Du bist Petrus. Tu sei Pietro. Tu es Petrus, et super hanc Petram edificabo ecclesiam meam, et porte inferi non prevalebunt adversus eam. Tu es Petrus. Not vos estis Petri. Voi siete Pietro. Vous êtes Pierre. This church, constituted and organized as a society. Why did they have to say a society? It's not a society, it's a perfect society. It is the only perfect society. It is, at least, if you want to avoid the term perfect, at least say the society. This church, constituted and organized as a society in the present world, subsists in the Catholic Church. I've explained this on the other tape, but I have to repeat it here. The church does not subsist in the Catholic Church, the Church of Christ. The Church of Christ is the Catholic Church. I think it was Cardinal Ratzinger. Let me always be careful. I really don't want to be sued for libel. I think it was Cardinal Ratzinger who said, yes, but the word esse in Latin, to be, is much stronger than the word subsistere, to subsist. If he said it, then he is a very wicked and sly and subtle liar. If he said it. St. Thomas Aquinas says, subsistentia est nobilissima forma essendi. Subsistence is the most noble form of being. He talks about God, St. Thomas Aquinas does. Now, God subsists in everything. Unlike pantheism, this is not God, except for an alcoholic. This is not God. But God subsists in the existence of this bottle. God subsisted in the winemaking for this bottle. God subsisted in the actions necessary to cast this bottle. And God subsists even in this tiny movement of my hand grabbing the bottle. He subsists to it. That means he gives it being. He does not identify himself with it. This is not God. This is not God, and my actions here are not God. Therefore, the word subsist means he is not the bottle. He gives subsistence to the existence of this bottle. But the Church of Christ is the Catholic Church. Therefore, the Church of Christ does not just subsist in the Catholic Church, it is the Catholic Church. Why did the Council say the Church of Christ subsists in the Catholic Church? Because in that case you can say, well, there's other churches in which he subsists. Indeed, the Pope, again, not I, the Pope is the competent authority to interpret this paragraph. Well, he very competently interprets this paragraph when he says that the Russian Orthodox churches, heretics and schismatics, are our sister churches. To the point that he calls the Ukrainian church, united with Rome, as something that separated itself from her mother church. So now, as Bishop Fillet pointed out so well, or Bishop Tissier de Marais, I don't remember, so now we are the aunt. The Orthodox Church is our sister church, and the Ukrainian church is the daughter to the Orthodox Church. So it's our niece church. Complicated relations, And that's what I call verbal diarrhea. Why does the Church subsist in the Catholic Church? That means it subsists to other churches too, the Church of Christ. Because, it says in the same number 8, nevertheless, many elements of sanctification and of truth are found outside its visible confines. Since these are gifts belonging to the Church of Christ, they are forces impelling towards Catholic unity. Now you got the reason. Now the circle is full. Unity in the Church means we reunite with the heretics and schismatics, then the Church will be united. Therefore, it is quite logical to say that the Church of Christ subsists in these other sister churches too. And that is why we are not united. Do you see the satanic reasoning behind this? I explained to you that the Catholic Church is always one and united. Therefore, the Catholic Church is the only one that is the Church of Christ. Now, Vatican II says we are not united because our sister churches, the Protestant churches, are not united with us. And that explains why the Church of Christ subsists in the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church obviously is not the only one. If the Catholic Church was the only one, then the Protestants can only convert to the Catholic Church, but not reunited with us. They left the Church. But the present Holy Father, who is the competent interpreter for this document, admired the heritage of Dr. Martin Luther several times when he was in Germany. Therefore, these gifts belonging to the Church of Christ, the Church of Christ now is not only the Catholic Church, but the sister churches too, they are forces impelling towards Catholic unity. Now, how about this, nevertheless, many elements of sanctification and truth are found outside its visible confines? Is that true? Well, no. When a Protestant pastor baptizes a little innocent Protestant child, and a truck runs over them, and the poor innocent Protestant child goes to heaven, does that mean many elements of sanctification are found outside the Catholic Church? No. It means that the Protestant pastor administers the Catholic sacrament of baptism illegitimately and illicitly outside the Church. Unless it's an emergency, in which case every human being may baptize. But if a Protestant minister solemnly administers baptism in his Protestant garage, then a temple, or a cute little New England church, then he administers illegitimately, illicitly, the Catholic sacrament of baptism, the sacrament that belongs to the Catholic Church, that is property of the Catholic Church. You see? So these, the element of sanctification called baptism is not found outside the Catholic Church, but is abused outside the Catholic Church. Having discussed this, there's another infelicitous wording here. Number 9. At all times and in every race, anyone who fears God and does what is right has been acceptable to him. He has, however, willed to make men holy and save them, not as individuals without any bond or link between them, but rather to make them into a people who might acknowledge him and serve him in holiness. That's right. At all times and in every race, anyone who fears God and does what is right has been acceptable to him. If the council had followed this number 9 of Lumen Gentium, they would have never said that there are elements of truth to be found outside the Church, outside its visible confines. They would have never said that we have to strive for an ecumenical brotherhood with other churches. What is right? What is right? Well, converting to the Catholic Church, of course. What is right? St. Augustine says there are Catholic things outside the Church, and there are many un-Catholic things inside the Church. Yes, that's abuses, sins, sacrileges, the new liturgy, stuff like that. Un-Catholic elements inside the Church, if it's still inside the Church. And there are Catholic things outside the Church. Oh yeah? I found one of the most beautiful sermons on the devil in St. Thomas Church in New York, which is Episcopalian. They still talk about the devil. The pastor there, may he convert to be a Catholic one day. I would hope for that, because he seems to be a good pastor. The pastor of the rector of St. Thomas Church in New York, 5th Avenue, 52nd Street. You find these sermons, you just donate a quarter and you take the sermon back home. Very beautiful sermon on the power of the devil, on the traps the devil sets in order to make us perish our soul. Excellent sermon. So that is a Catholic element outside the Catholic Church. But it's not an element of sanctification. It is a help for conversion. It is something that exists outside the Catholic Church, and for a sheer coincidence, not because of destiny, might be a help for conversion. This is how this is to be understood. When St. Augustine says there are un-Catholic things in the Church and Catholic things outside her. Now we come to new terminology. Number 13. The one people of God is accordingly present in all the nations of the earth. Mind you, in the same paragraph it says, the Church or people of God. That means now the people of God is a new expression for the term Church. It's a new term. Church is identical with people of God. And this Church, therefore, is present in all nations of the earth. That's at least optimistic, if you ask me, because as far as I know, in the Republic of Bhutan, or the Kingdom of Bhutan, or whatever it is, Bhutan, Catholic priests are not allowed there. In the Soviet Union, the Catholic priests were not allowed. Was the Catholic Church present? In a way, yes, underground. But the Council doesn't say underground. This is a new terminology. Now, everybody who wants to be holy belongs to the Church. Holding a rightful place in the communion of the Church, there are also particular churches, now you got it, that retain their own traditions without prejudice to the chair of Peter, which presides over the whole assembly of charity. Does this paragraph mean the Oriental churches that are united with the Pope? It doesn't say. A defender of the Council will say, of course, they mean the ones who are united with Rome. But then, some of them, and the Pope, starting with the Pope, say, the Russian Orthodox Church, definitely not united with Rome, but it's a sister church. See, it's confusing. I don't know what to make of it. Number 14. Basing itself on scripture and tradition, it teaches that the Church, a pilgrim now on earth, is necessary for salvation. Fine, I'm glad they say it. In number 14, in number 16, they don't. He is present to us in his body, which is the Church. A pilgrim on earth. What's the purpose of a pilgrimage? To find grace and enlightenment, to improve, to mature your spiritual life, to improve your spiritual life, to get better. Same mistake as before. The Church is perfect. She cannot be a pilgrim of her. One thing follows the other. The Church knows that she is joined in many ways to the baptized, who are honored by the name of Christians, but who do not, however, profess the Catholic faith in its entirety. It means the heretics. And have not preserved unity or communion under the successor of Peter. That means the schismatics. So let's translate this and read again. The Church knows she is joined in many ways to the heretics and schismatics. I would have liked the Council to explain to me in what way the Church is joined to heretics and schismatics when the Church says they are outside the Church. The Church dogmatically defines that they are outside the Church. How can she be joined to them? This is, to go back to the theological censures, this is not heresy, it is close to heresy. These Christians are indeed in some real way joined to us in the Holy Spirit. That is heresy and blasphemy. For by his gifts and graces, his sanctifying power is also active in them. Interesting. And he has strengthened some of them even to the shedding of their blood. This is direct heresy against the Council of Florence. Then Sänger Schönmetzer 1351, Pope Eugene IV, who said, even if they shed their blood for Christ, They cannot be saved. Again, I repeat, objectively. But the Council pronounces objectively, of course, because the Council, just like the whole Catholic Church, the Council cannot judge the dead. The Council cannot judge the internal intentions. The Council cannot judge souls. The Council can only, like the Church can, only judge objective ways of being saved. So the Council here speaks objectively, by nature, objectively. These Christians are indeed in some real way joined to us in the Holy Spirit, for by his gifts and graces his sanctifying power is also active in them, and he has strengthened some of them even to the shedding of their blood. This is the exact contrary of what the Council of Florence says. Therefore, the Council right here is in heresy. Now, how about all the poor Japanese who have never had a Catholic missionary until the year 1500-something? I don't know. Leave me alone. Give me a break. I don't know. The Church doesn't know. We don't know. God doesn't tell us everything. God doesn't tell you what I say in confession. Thank God. God doesn't tell us everything. I don't know what happened to the poor Japanese until the first Catholic missionary showed up and baptized the first Japs. I don't know. And I don't even try to find out. I have other problems. People are so hung up about the Buddhist monks in Bhutan and the Japanese until 1500 that they forget to save their own soul. Number 16. Finally, those who have not yet received the gospel are related to the people of God in various ways. The Church, that means. Those who have not yet received the gospel. It would have been nice if they had added potentially. They might convert and then they are in the Church. So potentially they are related to the Church. Potentially they are in the Church. Actually they are not. There is first that people to which the covenants and promises were made and from which Christ was born according to the flesh. In view of the divine choice, they are people of most dear for the sake of the fathers, for the gifts of God, and without repentance. The Jews, of course. Now, are the Jews related to the Catholic Church? I'm talking about the Jewish faith. I'm not talking about the individual Jew. Is the Jewish faith, whatever they call it, the Mosaic faith, all the different, the Hasidim and whatever, are they related to the Church? No, they're not. St. Paul says quite clearly, the Jews rejecting Christ do not even see the truth of the Old Testament, but through a veil or a curtain. Do the Jews pray to the same God we do? No. Is the God of the Old Testament the same God of the New Testament? Yes. But as they do not accept the God of the New Testament, they also reject the one of the Old Testament because they are identical. You see? Those people who contradict me on this point, I've got them in a beautiful trap. Either you say the Jews do not pray to the same God, or the God of the Old Testament is not the same as the New Testament. I'll leave the choice with you. St. Paul is very clear on that. The Jews have rejected God when they crucified Christ. All Jews? No, the Jews. Not the individual. I don't know about the individual. But the plan of salvation also includes those who acknowledge the Creator, in the first place amongst whom are the Muslims. They profess to hold the faith of Abraham, and together with us they adore one merciful God. No, they don't. Here I've had heated discussions with people who do not understand the distinction of objective and subjective. The Muslims reject the New Testament in the sense the Catholic Church uses it. The Muslims pray against us to one merciful God. Each Muslim? No, the Muslim. The Council says, Musulmani nobiscum adorant unum Deum misericordiosum. And I've heard it say, one of the arguments that they use is, okay, that means other Muslims will go to hell. I didn't say that. I don't know. That means the Muslims do not believe they are praying to the same God. That's not what I said. It's not what the Council said. The Council said they do pray to one merciful God together with us. If the Council had wanted to stay with outside heresy and within the faith, the Council would have had to say, the Muslims pray to one merciful God. They do. Allah is a merciful God in the Quran, and He's one God in the Quran. But it's not our God. St. Paul said, the gods of the pagans are demons. St. Paul said that. He spoke about the pagan religions at the time of Christ, but then again, the moment Muslims were not baptized anymore, they went back to paganism, and that is even worse, much worse, because it's apostasy. The Muslims are apostates. They reject the entire faith. The first Muslims were. Now the Muslims are neither apostates, nor heretics, nor schismatics. They're just pagans. Period. They cannot pray to one merciful God together with us. They pray to one merciful God, and they pray a lot more to one merciful God than the Christians do. They follow a lot more the funny precepts of the Quran written in the name of one merciful God than the Christians follow the New Testament. They are much more of an example in their religion than most Christians are in the true religion. But they do not pray together with us. It is absurd to claim that people who uphold the Quran are praying together with us to a merciful God. Objectively, they do not. The poor little Arab out there in the desert doesn't know what he's doing, maybe, and God one day might say, okay, you tried your best. I don't believe it for a minute. But subjectively, he might pray together with me. Subjectively. He might think that he does so. He might do so, subjectively. Objectively, definitely not. Objectively, he follows a book that says the very idea of the Trinity is excremental. I'm quoting the Quran, pardon me. They follow a book that in Surah 47 says, kill the infidels, that means us. Objectively, they do not pray together with us, but against us. They pray for the perish of our faith. They pray for the destruction of the Catholic faith. They pray for the destruction of the Catholic Church. They pray for the conversion of the Catholics to Islam. To call this, to say that they pray together with us, is therefore close to heresy in denying at least the importance of the dogma on the Trinity and Incarnation, which the Muslims reject, and on the Mother of God, which the Muslims revere, but not as Mother of God, but as a holy woman. And it is definitely, by saying all these things, blasphemous. It insults God. It's offensive to pious ears. In number 18, the Council says, the holders of office who are invested with a sacred power are in fact dedicated to promoting the interests of their brethren. No, sir, they are not. I am not empowered, and the purpose of my being a priest is not to promote the interests of you. I am here to promote your faith and the interests of God. I'm here to promote your following the 10 Commandments, which is, at least as the 6th commandment is concerned, not your interest, really. Beg your pardon, but at least with most people, right? Starting with me. The 6th commandment is not my interest. My interest is to follow God and His orders, to say yes, sir, to God. I do not promote your interests, I promote your salvation, and therefore God's interest, because God wants everybody to be saved, but not without the individual's agreement. In number 22, no, it's not 22-2. In number 22, the Council says, in it the bishops in the church, whilst loyally respecting the primacy and preeminence of their head, that's optimism, exercise their own proper authority for the good of their faithful, indeed even for the good of the whole church, the organic structure and harmony of which are strengthened by the continued influence of the Holy Spirit. The supreme authority over the whole church, which this college possesses is exercised in a solemn way in an ecumenical council. The College of Bishops doesn't possess any supreme authority, only the Pope does. And then they say, you see, this is it's a devious way of thinking, talking, writing, and preaching. When the bishops, together with the Pope, decide on something, the supreme authority of the whole church is talking. Yes, because, why? The same council later on says it. Because of the authority given to the Pope. So the supreme authority in the church is not the College of Bishops, but the Pope. The same council says if the College of Bishops decides without the Pope or against the Pope, it's not valid. The decision is not valid. Therefore, why does the council say here the supreme authority over the whole church, which this college possesses? The College of Bishops does not possess any supreme authority. The Pope has it, and only because the Pope has it, the College of Bishops has it as long as they confirm what the Pope says and agree with what the Pope says, or have their pronouncements confirmed by the Pope. I'm turning pages here because most of it is such tiring blah blah. Although the bishops, taken individually, do not enjoy the privilege of infallibility, they do, however, proclaim infallibly the doctrine of Christ on the following conditions. Namely, when, even though dispersed throughout the world, but preserving for all that amongst themselves and with... Excuse me. Okay. Throughout the world, but preserving for all that amongst themselves and with Peter's successor, the bond of communion, in their authoritative teaching concerning matters of faith and morals, they are in agreement that a particular teaching is to be held definitively and absolutely. Again, the bishops don't possess anything. It says, only in agreement with Peter's successor. Why do they bother talk many lines and many pages about the privilege of infallibility given to the bishops? Why? And the very fact that in the same number 25, I didn't give the number, excuse me, in the same number 25, there is a very beautiful description of the papal infallibility. You see that the council bothers, even though it does not deny the papal infallibility, and even though it does not logically contradict what it says about the papal infallibility, bothers to tell you several times over that the bishops have the supreme power. Why? What for? What's the purpose? Why did they bother to do that? Well, again, the historical and papal interpretation of it is that most of the powers today are given away to the College of Bishops, the Bishops' Conferences, the Synod of Bishops, the Council of Bishops, to the point that in Redemptor Hominis, the first encyclical this Pope wrote, this Pope really defaces himself when he says that the unity of the Church is consistent in the Synod of Bishops, the Bishops' Conferences, the Episcopal Councils, the Parish Councils. So we have a Soviet Church. Soviet means council. All councils. All bureaucratic blah blah with majority vote. That is the unity of the Church? Well, according to Redemptor Hominis, it is. In Redemptor Hominis, the Pope does not mention the unity of faith, the unity of the liturgy, and the unity under Peter. No, he mentions the unity of the Church as something consistent in the Episcopal Conferences, the local conferences, the local synods, the parish councils, the Episcopal councils, the priestly councils. That means we have a committee church. And now the Vatican is the central committee. This is the Soviet Union in the Church. And the purpose of the collegiality is, indeed, to weaken the power of the papacy. You will read about this in Father Paul Kramer's book. In number, this is an extensive number, 29, at the end of number 29, now the council finally starts to make proposals. It will be possible in the future to restore the diaconate as a proper and permanent rank of the hierarchy. The Council of Trent did not want that. but it pertains to the competent local episcopal conferences, this is 22.2 again, of one kind or another, with the approval of the Supreme Pontiff to decide whether and where it is opportune that such deacons be appointed. Should the Roman Pontiff think fit, it will be possible to confer this diaconal order even upon married men, provided they be of more mature age, whatever that means. I've met imbeciles at the age of 80. Not imbeciles again, but always been imbeciles. And also on suitable young men, for whom, however, the law of celibacy must remain in force, at least that. This is destruction of the diaconate, because the diaconate is a state of orders towards the priesthood. The Council of Trent explicitly said, we do not want you to give minor orders to people who do not strive for the priesthood. And that's rightly so, because believe me, celibacy is not easy. You need the graces of the office, and the graces of the office come with the priesthood, not with some benedictions. They come with diaconate, but not as much as a priest gets them. Also, if somebody wants to live a celibate life, why wouldn't he want to become a priest anyway? Unless he becomes a brother in a monastery, which is entirely different, not to be compared to the diaconate. And again, the Council does not talk about the minor orders. Consequently, Paul VI attempted to abolish them. Attempted, I say, because he did not outlaw them. First. Second, his decisions is invalid anyway, because the subdiaconate at least goes back to the time of the apostles. Everything that has been said of the people of God is addressed equally to laity, religious, and clergy. Where's the hierarchy? I mean, I'm very glad if at the last judgment I'm judged exactly as you will be. I'd be glad about that, because I know it won't be that way. I'm a priest. I'm above all of you, so I will be judged first, and I will be judged a lot more harshly than you will. But make no mistake, hell is hell, wherever you end. The rest is blah, 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 blah. The Pilgrim Church, an entire chapter on the Pilgrim Church. I'm not going to bore you with this. Then finally, there's an appendix, chapter 8, on Our Lady. Many council fathers wanted the council to speak in a separate document on Our Lady. Cardinal Koenig of Vienna said, no, there's no need for it. And believe it or not, by the time the council was finished, I think some people would agree with me when they say, thank God the council at least didn't say much about Our Lady. Nothing good would have come out of it anyway. At the end of this document, which is ending my conference today, at the end of this document, there's an explanatory note. Announcement made by the Secretary General of the Council at the 123rd General Congregation, November 16, 1964. A query has been made as to what is the theological qualification. I explained. Remember when I talked about the positions of, the theological positions, when I said something is of divine faith, defined faith, close to the faith, sententia certa, reasonably sure, we're sure about it, or it's just probable. This is what's meant here, theological qualification. That means, is this council dogmatic or not? A query has been made as to what is the theological qualification to be attached to the teaching put forward in the scheme. The Church, on which a vote is to be taken. The Doctrinal Commission has replied to this query in appraising the modi, that means the different ways of, proposed to the third chapter of the schema, the Church. That means Lumen Gentium. As is self-evident, the conciliar text is to be interpreted in accordance with the general rules which are known to all. That means face value. So please don't try to tell me that all this can really find a Catholic interpretation. On face value it doesn't, and that's good enough for me. On this occasion, the Doctrinal Commission referred to its declaration of March 6, 1964, which we reproduce here. I quote, taking into account conciliar practice and the pastoral purpose of this present council, the Sacred Synod defined as binding on the Church only those matters of faith and morals which it has expressly put forward as such. Whatever else it proposes as the teaching of supreme magisterium of the Church is to be acknowledged and accepted by each and every member of the faithful according to the mind of the Council, which is clear from the subject matter and its formulation, following the norms of theological interpretation. That means the Council is at most ordinary magisterium, not extraordinary magisterium. I read Pope Pius XII on ordinary magisterium to you, and I explained with this in a context with what Pope Innocent III and many other popes and saints and doctors of the church, I forgot to mention St. Robert Bellarmine, say. The council does not have the authority of ordinary teaching because in parts of its documents it contradicts directly. You have seen a few of the heresies. The ones I'm going to talk about in the next session will even be worse. Because the council contradicts ordinary and extraordinary magisterium in the past, the council cannot claim the authority of ordinary magisterium. Archbishop Lefebvre asked Cardinal Pericle Felici, the secretary of the council, on the theological qualifications, in addition to this declaration. And Cardinal Felici said, well, of course, as far as those things are concerned that the council quoted from former councils anyway, they have to be upheld, of course. But as far as the new things are concerned, they have to be taken with care. Now, taken with care means you look at how the church interpreted things in the past and how the church took position to documents in the past. In the old days, there was an index, a list of forbidden books. There was a proper congregation in the Roman Curia, congregation of the index, just on that topic. There were a few pious and learned priests who would read through endless boring and stupid books in order to find out if they're acceptable to a Catholic or not. Now, just to show you how the church thought about that once upon a time, the wonderful novel by Alexandre Dumas, The Three Musketeers, was put on the index because Alexandre Dumas made fun of a cardinal of the Holy Roman Church. Cardinal Armand Jean Richelieu, Armand Jean Duplessis de Richelieu, Cardinal and Archbishop of Paris, Grand Admiral of the King, Louis XIII, was a criminal. He signed a contract with the Turks against the Catholic Empire of Austria. He was a criminal. He bribed Protestant, he bribed princes and counts in Germany in order to become Protestants, therefore binding their local territory to the Protestant religion, and therefore destroy the power of Austria against France. Cardinal Richelieu was a politician of the worst kind. He was the Clinton of his age. And yet, because he was a cardinal of the Holy Roman Church, the Church did not approve of a lay author making fun of him in a book. If you say that's exaggerated, I agree. I've read The Three Musketeers 4 times over. And I saw practically all the movies based on the book. And I loved the book. And Cardinal Richelieu was a criminal. But anyway, the church found it scandalous just because they made fun of the cardinal, of a cardinal of the Holy Roman Church. Now you can imagine how the congregation of the Index treated a book that contained heresy. Back home, I have a very good translation of the Bible into German, written by Van S, V-A-N-E-S-S. Van S. The Van S Bible is on the Index because it contains a few minor errors. It's been put on the Index, even though it's the Bible. It's been put on the Index because of a few minor errors. Take an educated guess what the congregation of the Index would have done with this book. And this is why, and be very careful about the distinction I'm about to make, this is why I reject Vatican II. Non in omnibus, sed in toto. Non in omnibus, sed in toto. I reject Vatican II as a whole, not in each line. That would be heretical because occasionally Vatican II quotes the Council of Trent and Nicaea and whatever. They quote old councils, and as far as they do that, they proclaim the doctrine of the Church. But as far as the new things are concerned, as Cardinal Felici said, they have to be taken with care. Therefore, I solemnly reject this book. I reject Vatican II in its entirety, not in every single line. As such, I reject this book because it contains heresy, not because everything in it is heresy. The translation of the Bible made by Martin Luther is not entirely wrong, but it has always been rejected by the Church because of a few mistakes, deliberately or erroneously inserted. The Church rejects a book the moment the Church finds one single grave error in the book. If the Church has always done that, then I have to do so. I've just shown you a few errors. Let's just call them errors. Some people get upset when I pronounce the judgment on what is heresy, what is not heresy. I couldn't care less what they say, but anyway, at least some of the things in this council are erroneous. Therefore, I reject it. And you have to if you want to stay Catholics. Thank you. 10 minutes of questions and answers. Please ask important questions. And give me, wait, before I answer a question, I retain the right to reject a question without personal offense. Anybody is personally offended because I reject the question, he did not understand. We don't have enough time to answer all the questions. I will choose what question I consider important. Ask.
Is there any chance that this English translation is improperly translated from the Latin?
Thank you. Very good question. Excellent question. I'm sorry I forgot to tell you. This is the translation of the documents of Vatican II, translated by Austin Flannery O.P. This is the best translation of Vatican II in any language. And to show you how devious some translators are, there is another translation. I forgot the author, the translator. There's another translation available in America. It's usually, I mean, in the old days, it had a red cover, not the blue. And they translated that horrible heresy of Lumen Gentium 16, the Muslims together with us adore one God. In Latin, it is Musulmani, nobiscum adorant unum Deum. Nobiscum means together with us. The other guy translated it along with us. That is a very devious mistake in translation. Because if you say the Muslims along with us pray to one merciful God, it's just about an acceptable statement, just about. It's close to error. But together with us is an expression that has to be rejected. The Latin original says nobiscum. Nobiscum, look it up in your Latin dictionaries. Nobiscum is not along with us, it's with us, together with us. Nobiscum. And I have checked the most important statements in this book with the Latin original text, and I found this book to be an excellent translation. Next.
One of the traditional priests is saying the Mass spoke on the 23rd. Do you know if there's any violation there of quo primo?
No. I will talk about this in New Orleans. Next question.
Yeah, I'm a little confused in this because where is, if the Church is doing this, or the Vatican II is established, then where is, and you're educated, that sounds like to me, where are they going to go? Where are the people who don't agree with this? Where's the outlook for them? How are they going to, who's going to establish something?
A future pope will have to. I wish I had the answer for this, but...
what church are they going to go to then?
I wish I had the answer. I wish I had the answer.
We're in a state of,
It's the greatest confusion in church history. There have been confusions like this before, like when Pope Liberius sided with the Arianist heresy, and the only one to reject him, to reject his error, was Saint Athanasius. You can imagine how confused the people were. Or I think of the situation of Pope Honorius siding with the monothelies, which is saying that Christ has only one will, not divine and human will. And remember the situation of John the 22nd, who said that the souls of the dead cannot face the beatific vision or cannot go to hell before the last judgment, which is definite heresy against the Fourth Council of Constantinople and the Fourth Lateran Council, I'm sorry. And John the 22nd took it back only on his deathbed. And then there was a time, remember, the 14th century, the end of the 14th century, we had 3 popes. And people didn't know who was the pope. That's why I repeatedly said, de internis ecclesia non judicat. The church doesn't judge internal intentions. If a human being makes a mistake because the conciliar church confused him, he will not be accountable for it. Yeah?
What, in your opinion, is the best Bible today in English print?
The one you find in the book stands of the Society of St. Pius X. They checked it all.
Father, that's just a cut concentration. You consider this actually systematic.
The church did, because the church did, and I do, because there was no necessity to do so. But that's a long story. It's a long story. I put it in a nutshell, but we can't go into this too much. Archbishop Took, when in 1949 he consecrated bishops, was against the will of the Pope, he did not have the absolute need to do so. In my first tape, which is available from Maida Publishers, I explained why Archbishop Lefebvre had to consecrate bishops. If he had not done so, there would be not a single seminary left in this world which allows a young man who rejects Vatican II like I do, and who rejects the new rite like I do, to become a Catholic priest. So this was an act of self-defense and defense of the church. It was an act of extreme necessity.
1949, though, he had tough candidates to Vietnam.
Excuse me?
1949?
Yeah?
You said 1949.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah. There was no need.
Well, obviously, he felt there was a need because...
He felt there was a need, so the excommunication in the new code of Canon Law does not apply. But no, the general. See, that's why I told you this is another conference. Generally speaking, that was not the situation which Archbishop Lefebvre found himself in, and I don't think that the justification of self-defense can be applied.
So then you consider him to be systematic?
No,
That's all I need to know.
absolutely not. Not for that. If I consider him schismatic, it might be for other reasons, but not for that. No illegal episcopal consecration makes you a schismatic. The Church has never said that. The Church has never believed that. And the present Pope, in his letter Ecclesia Dei, is lying about this and going against the tradition of moral theology. I've explained this in Philadelphia. Read the Catholic Family News. Next question.
What about the Peter Society founded by the Holy Father, who now has 15 parishes throughout the United States?
The St. Peter's Society, I have to underline, because people have indeed walked out on me just because I said the St. Peter's Society is wrong. I do not talk about the members of the St. Peter's Society. I do not judge any one of them. But the St. Peter's Society officially, mind you, and this is the whole point, officially had to agree not to criticize and condemn Vatican II, and not to criticize and condemn the Novus Ordo. Do I have to say more? Next question. Yeah?
We believe in the Latin in the Holy Mass, of course. But to what extent should Latin extend to the Catholic faith? For example, the confession, believe that they are so more valid than the Benedictine.
There's no such thing as more or less valid. It's valid or not valid. That is the question. The Latin has to be used as much as possible and sensible. Because Latin is a dead language, English is a decaying language. And a dead language does not change. As long as I speak Latin, I automatically, wanting to or not, I automatically say the same thing the Council of Trent said. This is why you will find Latin quotations in my talks, because I want to enable those who do not own the Denzinger Schönmetzer collection of papal pronouncements and conciliar pronouncements. I want them to be able to check the Latin and to check what the Church really said. Because what the Church says, look how language changed. We are in the 90s, aren't we? And they are gay 90s, believe me. Does that mean the same it meant 100 years ago? The gay 90s in San Francisco 100 years ago, were they the same gay 90s they are now? The language changes. I personally, Pius XII, in my judgment, this is the judgment of a theologian. It is not a papal judgment. A future pope will have to decide what I say. Pius XII, as far as I'm concerned, gave in too much into the vernacular. I think that the vernacular, that's always dangerous. The vernacular is dangerous, first of all, as far as the content of theology is concerned. Second, as far as mistakes are concerned. You heard what I said about the papal mass in Vienna. Third, it confuses people. First of all, it confuses people by making them believe now they understand everything. They do not. Less even once they get the idea that now they understand something. I don't think that anybody should go to confession at all if he does not know what the priest means by his saying, ego te absolvo peccatis tuis in nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. I mean, he didn't have the proper catechesis then. A child, I do not admit a child into confession that says, I want you to say this in the vernacular because I don't understand what you say. I explain to the child what it means before I admit him to first confession. I explain to him what the Latin means. I explain to him the significance of confession. The only exceptions are the matrimonial consent has to be in the vernacular. Because in Latin it is vis, so-and-so, so-and-so, and then the answer is volo. I will. I want so. Do you want this here? Will. I want so. Do you want this here present, so-and-so, as your legitimate wife according to the right of the Holy Roman Church? And the answer is, in English, yes. Nobody can say afterwards, I meant something else. If you use the Latin word volo, volo does not only mean I want, I will, it also means I fly. Also, I don't want anybody to say afterwards, Father, but I didn't know what you were asking us, so I said anyway, yes. Renders marriage invalid. At baptism, sometimes a baptism of the adult, I have to ask an adult, what do you want? So I instruct them before, just to repeat what I say, and I explain to them what it will be. Like I have to ask him, what do you want? Baptism. What will baptism give you? The faith. And then before I baptize him, I say again, Visne baptizari, do you want to be baptized? And he says, yes, sir. So I explained to him before, when I look at you and say, you say yes, then you say yes to this and this and this and this. Why do I need the vernacular? Next question. Yeah.
Very true to the initiation of Vatican II being accountable to Pius XII.
A what?
His idea, he kicked off Vatican II, and then it was been held on by John XXIII and the Pope following.
I've never heard that before. No. Okay. I'm tired. Let's conclude this with a short prayer. Agimus tibi gratias omnipotens Deus, pro universus beneficis tuis, qui vivis et regnas per omnia saecula saeculorum. Kneel as much as you can. Benedictio Dei omnipotentis, Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, descendat super vos et mania semper. Sancte Pie Decime, ora pro nobis. Thank you.